Well, hi everybody. I'm Larry Keene, Senior Vice President and General Counsel for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, and I'm pleased to be joined here with my good friend, the Attorney General of Montana, Austin Knudsen. Thanks for joining us, Austin.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Larry.
So you're having a good show?
Always having a great show. Love being at SHOT Show. I've been coming here on my own for several years, and now it's fun to be here officially.
Yeah, wearing your official hat.
Exactly.
Which is, of course, cowboy hat.
It's the Montana tuxedo.
There you go. So, there are a lot of Republican attorney generals around the country that are big supporters of the Second Amendment, but I have to say, you sort of lead that community. You lead the charge among all of the Republican AGs, and I can't thank you enough for your leadership on our effort. You've been very, very active. I mean, every time I turn around, it seems there's another letter on a Second Amendment issue that you've led on, whether it's the UPS FedEx issue recently, the merchant category code, letters on bump stocks, arm braces, privately made firearms.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of reaction do you get when you send these letters? Do you get a response? And do they impact and influence policy?
They do, and we were kind of surprised at that. Frankly, when you send a letter to a company like FedEx, to a company like UPS, we didn't expect to get much of a response. We're kind of a small little rural state, but we definitely put a shot across their bow once we found out that they were pretty actively discriminating against firearm FFL holders. We got a pretty quick response. They're wanting to meet and get together and say, not us, we didn't do it.
Yeah, and this, merchant category code.
Huge.
A really big, dangerous issue. The implications long term for the Second Amendment for the privacy of gun owners is really troubling. And, it really just fits into this general kind of rubric of wokeism, woke capitalism, boardroom politics. I mean, it's a real challenge, and you've been very active in helping to push back on that.
Well, it's frustrating. I come from a legislative background, Larry.
Yes.
I was the state speaker of the House in Montana. I was in the legislative branch for a long time. I actually know how to make law. Apparently, a lot of these politicians on the left and in our president's office don't understand that, because they know full well they cannot get a lot of their agenda through the U.S. Congress. They don't have the votes. They will never get it through the House. And even in a Democrat-controlled Senate, you're not going to have some of those more moderate Democrat senators aren't going to support that garbage. So it's incredibly.
There's one in Montana in particular.
There
correct?
might be.
Yeah.
There might be a guy who's coming up for re-election here pretty soon that we need to send home back to his organic farm.
It's we saw under the Obama administration, this operation Chokehold, right, or choke point, and it seems that while we were able to stop that from the federal government, it's been privatized.
Yeah.
And now the banks are doing it.
Absolutely.
And so we're pushing back on that. Just yesterday, one of your colleagues, Ken Paxton from Texas, revoked Citibank's verification on the Texas FIND Act, Firearms Industry Non-Discrimination Act. So we know you're very active, that you've written to the banks on this. And one other thing that you've been very active on, and we really appreciate, is filing amicus briefs.
Yeah.
In like our case against New York over their public nuisance statute, which is really just an attempt to have an end run around the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act, and where the state of New York is trying to regulate how retailers operate outside of New York.
Right.
And one of the plaintiffs is a Montana retailer that you're familiar with.
Look, I'm a gun guy. This is what I do. So a lot of those plaintiffs and a lot of those businesses in Montana, I talk to them, I know them, they reach out to my office when stuff like this happens. So things like that are a no-brainer for me. I mean, and they're flagrantly unconstitutional. I mean, a state does not get to regulate interstate commerce. I mean, that's constitutional law 101. You know this.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've made that argument in the case that you can have a manufacturer from let's say New Hampshire sell firearm to a retailer in, let's say, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who sells it to a retailer in Montana who sells it in compliance with federal law, the law of Montana. The buyer passes a background check. If that gun ends up somehow in New York through no activity by anybody in the chain of commerce, New York wants to be able to sue you for
Well, and
it. Just the mere illegal possession.
It's so frustrating. I mean, who is more law-abiding than a federal firearms license holder?
Exactly.
Those people are literally the most heavily regulated industry in the country. There's more federal regulation, federal law, not to mention state law.
Yeah.
And so when we have the administration just piling on more and more and more and more, and then flagrantly overreaching past their constitutional power, that's when you're going to have states like Montana step in.
Well, we've seen this just recently. The Fifth Circuit out of New Orleans struck down ATF's bump stock rule as just making law, not implementing law. And I thought that was a very important decision. And really, it's the first time I can recall seeing a court, really push back against the administrative state, and say you don't have the right to make law. The legislature makes law. You have to stick within the confines of the statute.
Well, and as you know, I mean, just within the last 6 months, we got the EPA decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. That's not one that we as gun people really pay attention to, but we should, because that's a huge case.
Yeah.
And they basically, the U.S. Supreme Court told the Environmental Protection Agency the same thing. Like, hey, you don't get to create law.
Yeah.
You get to execute the law that Congress passes. That is going to be applied to the ATF.
Yes.
And that's why we teed up a lot of these lawsuits.
And there's one small example of where I think ATF has just made law on the framer receiver rule.
Yeah.
Right. They've said to retailers, if you get a privately made firearm, you have to serialize it. And there is nothing in the statute that authorizes that. The statute says manufacturers and importer have to serialize.
Right.
And we argued that with them in our comment letter, saying you're just making up law. Maybe you think that's good policy, but you don't get to make the policy.
Right.
That's
go to Congress.
Exactly.
Watch Schoolhouse Rock, would you?
That's right.
This is how we make law. I'm just a bill. You don't just get to create it at the agency level. Yeah, incredibly frustrating.
It reminds me of that old skit from Saturday Night Live, under the Obama administration, I'm just an executive order. I just happen, like you're just making it up.
Absolutely.
And it's very hard to fight that. So we really appreciate your leadership on that. I can guarantee you there will be many opportunities for you to lead the charge in filing amicus briefs or even filing actions to challenge some of these overreaches by the federal government. I really appreciate your amicus brief and the NSSF versus the Attorney General, your colleague from New York, on this public nuisance law. That's very, very dangerous.
It is.
Very dangerous. It is, it's a flagrant attempt to sidestep and try to avoid the will of Congress by just taking a negligence claim, codifying it, and calling it public nuisance and saying it's an exception to the law.
Flagrantly trying to do an end run around the PLCCA.
Yeah, absolutely. So and we're seeing that spread. New Jersey, Delaware, California, Illinois is about to do it. Washington just passed out of committee. So all of these pro-gun or anti-gun states, we're going to see this. And if it prevails, I mean, it's Katie bar the door, and they will destroy and bankrupt the firearms industry, which is to say they will destroy the Second Amendment.
Absolutely.
If there's no industry, there's no Second Amendment. It's an illusion.
100%. No, and I mean, I'm happy to be a leader in this front. I mean, I've got a lot of great colleagues in Republican states. Generally, everyone's pretty pro Second Amendment, but I think I might be the only actual gun guy in elected office in the country. So this is an easy one for me. I want to be a leader in this space.
And you are. You are the leader within the Attorney Generals. And I can't thank you enough. It's fantastic.
No.
Thanks for coming to the SHOT Show. You're always welcome. And again, the General has been coming to the SHOT Show long before he was elected Attorney General.
Very true. I've been sneaking in here for years.
Yes. You don't have to sneak anymore. Thank you so much for your time. It's really great to see you.
You too. Thanks a lot. Yep.
That's all the time we have, folks. Have a great SHOT Show.